Hi, welcome to my second ever YouTube video. This one's going to be taking the next sort of step from the first video, and it's going to hopefully show you how to achieve what I think is the holy grail of inverter and home assistant integration, which is getting the inverter to dynamically charge the battery based on the state of the battery and solar forecast for the next day or the current day, and also whether or not the current unit rate from Octopus Agile, which is my electricity provider, um, makes it desirable to charge the battery at this time. When I first got my install done, this was something that the installers said was possible, but then when I asked them how to do it, they actually had no idea. Solis themselves were of no help, but through the help of some people in the owners group, we've managed to get this working. It is a little bit involved, but I think it's definitely something that's worth doing, as it can optimize how you use your inverter, and hopefully how to make the best out of any revenue that you can save. So first of all, there's some prerequisites that we're gonna need before we can get this stuff working. Most of them are the same as in the previous video. So if you've not seen the previous video, then please find that somewhere on my channel and work through that and get everything set up so that your inverter can talk to Home Assistant. As if you haven't already got that in place, then none of this is going to work. So if we have a quick look at the prerequisites, so most of these are going to be the same as last time. So we need a full fat install of Home Assistant with hacks. We need SolarMan. We need the solar forecast integration, which I don't think I mentioned last time. You need the MQTT add-on. Most importantly, again like last time, you need a Wi-Fi logger on your inverter with a 40 or 41 serial number, which I think is a version. Is it a version 4 rather than a version 5? Fortunately, that's what I had installed, so I've not seen the new loggers. You then also need something on which to run Python, such as a Raspberry Pi, which is what I'm using. You need Python installed on that device. You need MQTT on that device, Solis mod, PySolarMan as well. So again, this is all still stuff that would be hanging over from the last video that hopefully you are familiar with now. In Home Assistant, we also need the Octopus Agile integration and the rate card. The rate card isn't actually necessary, it's just nice to look at, and it gives a visual check that it's doing what it should be doing. The file editor add-on is really helpful, and the Samba add-on is really helpful as well. Finally, what you need to do, and I could only do this by getting in front of the inverter itself and programming it from the keys on the box, is the inverter must be in self-use mode, and the charge time needs to be set pretty much to 24 hours. So don't worry when you commit this to the inverter, it's not actually going to start charging all of the time, and I'll show you why in a moment. I had initially set my charge amps to 35 because I was being nice to the inverter and my batteries. Having now checked the data sheets on the inverter and the batteries, I've seen that I can charge at, well, the data sheets actually say 100 amps, but there's absolutely no way I would do that. It seems the default is 50, but as we'll see in a moment, I've actually got mine set to 45 as I didn't want to push it too hard. So there we go. So that's all our prerequisites. So what we're going to look to do is, based on the logic that I'm using, is when my battery is below 50%, when it's the best, as in the cheapest 2-hour time slot from Octopus Agile, and if the solar forecast is poor in the next sort of window, and I'll show you how I've broken down my time slots, then I'm going to make the inverter charge from the grid rather than charge from solar. I'm recording this in October in the UK. So this is the first sort of autumn and coming into the first winter I've had with the inverter and my PV setup. So actually this is now partly what's motivated me to get this working, in that uh, on a reasonable day now I'm just about getting a full charge on my batteries, but like today the weather's actually pretty poor, so there's no way I'm going to get much into the batteries from the PV. So I want to maximize charging from grid when it's the cheapest. For those not familiar, sorry, excuse me, not familiar with Octopus Agile, if you're outside of the UK, we have a provider which has a variable rate of unit charge for electricity, and it depends on all sorts of factors, but essentially the variance comes from the wholesale price of electricity that they buy the electricity for. So on the Agile rate card, you can see for the next 24 hours, these are, well, actually there's not much variance typically in in that. So we can see it's 33.86 pence per kilowatt hour for the next 24 hours. If we look at my integration, I've got the previous and current rates and average rates. You see there's a tiny little bit of variance in there. Interestingly, 2 days ago, overnight, they were actually overproducing and they were paying people to draw from the grid. I think it was between like 1:30 and 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning. They were paying up to 7p a unit for you to use their electricity. So you absolutely wanted to make sure that your battery was charging, and I turned my dishwasher on then and all sorts to yeah, just to try and make the best of it. But yeah, typically this does vary a little bit. We've just had a massive price increase in the UK, so it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out over the next few weeks. But typically it's around 35 pence a unit. I say over the last couple of days it's been a little bit lower at times, and I imagine coming up it's going to be higher than that as well. So how we control the inverter to charge from grid or charge from solar is actually just down to a single register in the inverter, and I must admit I cannot take the credit for finding this. A couple of other people who are a lot cleverer than me found it, and if we look in the RS485 Modbus document, which I'm pretty sure I must have put a link to in the previous video, it's register 43110. Now, under normal circumstances, when we're charging from PV, that will translate to decimal value 33, and when we're charging from the grid, that flips to 35. So 33, we've got bits 0 and 1 set, and when we're charging from grid, it's bit 2 and bit 0 that are set. Now, again, sorry to keep mentioning my previous video, but that shows how you can set the registers and check the registers in the in Solis Mod and Pi Solar Man. Just on my Raspberry Pi, which is talking to my inverter via MQTT, as we've shown before. I have a little Pi Solar Man script called Solis Mode. So if I do Python Solis, we can see currently I am set to be charging from PV, and if we look at my my Home Assistant, that would make sense because I've already got 68% battery, and we'll come to this in a moment, but the best 2-hour time for charging is currently false. We'll cover that in a little bit in more detail. Just to show you what that script looks like, if you like. Again, this is Pi Solar Man. So literally all I'm doing is reading the value of register 43110, and that's all that's happened there. So we've just queried that register and we can see that it's returned the value of 33. back in Home Assistant, if we go into settings, automations and scripts, I have a couple of scripts now which can flip that register between the values of 33 and 35. So here we can see I've got my Solis charge from PV script. If I open that up, we can see that I'm sending the payload of 33 into that topic. Now this is important actually. So yeah, we need to make sure that we have that register defined in that topic within our registers PY on our Raspberry Pi. So if we just go into our Solis mod config directory and we do a more on registers, we can see, let's get that slightly better formatted for you. We need to make sure that we have register 43110 defined against a topic. You can call that whatever you like. Obviously the register number has to be absolutely correct, and that topic just needs to match what you define against here in your Home Assistant script. So what we can do, let's say I've got a script there to say charge from PV. I also have another script which is to charge from grid, and we can see that I'm then setting that value to 35. Now I must admit, the first time I ever committed that script and got it to run, my heart was in my mouth a little bit because I didn't want the thing to catch fire or explode or anything like that, but I'm pleased to say that didn't happen, and yeah, we did start charging from the grid. As a little demo, if you like, I will quickly show you that in action. So if I just duplicate that tab a minute, what we'll do, so right now we can see my battery 68%. I've got 5.7 amps or 6 amps of current coming out of the battery just for running stuff that's in the house. If I go into here and I flip that bit to 35, so I'm going to run my charge from grid script. There we go. If I now look in my Pi and I run the script to check the mode, we can see that has changed to 35. And if we look in my Home Assistant dashboard, if I just refresh that, might take a moment. Here we go. Battery current's up to 46 amps, and we are now pulling from the grid. My storage control mode has changed to charging from grid rather than spontaneous. I must admit I did have to poke around in the integration for SolarMan to get it to say that. So that if you have this set up already, it will change the value, but it'll probably just change it to lookup because it doesn't know what value 35 is in SolarMan. But we'll see that we've seen that's changed. What I'm going to do, because I don't actually want to be charging from the grid right now, because my battery's got plenty of capacity and all the rest of it, so I'm just going to flip that bit back. So if we go back to my scripts and I'm going to say charge from PV, we're going to run that. If we now go back into my Pi, query that register, let's flip back to 33, and if we refresh my dashboard, we can see the current has dropped. Something in my house must be pulling something somewhere, because we also draw in 900 watts somewhere. Maybe my fridge has just kicked in or something like that, but hopefully that will drop off in a minute. And we can see my storage control mode is swapped back to spontaneous rather than charging from grid. So I'm happy that that's all working. So the next step is to automate this. so that the battery charges automatically at a desirable time, i.e. when the solar forecast for the next period is bad. Oh, there we go. Look, the battery current's now just dropped off. Yeah, so when the solar forecast is bad and when the battery doesn't have much charge in it, well, you can obviously set your own parameters. So I'm just going to show you what I've done and how this works. So if we go back into our settings and automations, I have a number of automations to try and get this to work how I want. I'm still sort of trying to get this dialed in as best I can. It's early days, but it is working, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So if we have a look at this overnight charge automation here, so I've got an automation which is going to charge overnight from the grid if the solar forecast is poor. And this is going to run between midnight and 5 a.m. So the trigger is when my Octopus Agile integration best 2-hour time slot changes from true to false. So I have a number of sensors configured in Octopus Agile which work out when the best time is in terms of the cheapest rates, and I've got these set for half hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, and 4 hour. I kind of as a oh look, so literally because our rate's the same all the time there, our best 2-hour slot, because we've just gone over a half-hour border. It's 9 o'clock in the UK now, so 8 o'clock UTC. That's just triggered from false to true because the best 2-hour time slot, according to that logic, is now. So that's quite interesting. We got to see that in real time. So as I say, we've got the sensors configured in Octopus Agile, which work out when the best 2-hour time slot or 4-hour time slot is. And when that happens, I've got a sensor which will change from false to true at that time. So in my automation, that is the trigger. So literally it says, is the best 2-hour time slot now? If so, then we activate the trigger. We then look to meet some conditions to see if we're going to charge the battery from the grid. Because if the battery is already, full of charge or, above 50% in my case, then we don't want to charge it. Or if the solar forecast is actually really good, then we'll just wait for the sun to come out. And we also have the time condition, which I've set of between midnight and 5 a.m. So we'll just have a quick look at these, and literally, hopefully this is all fairly sort of self-explanatory. So my battery state of charge entity, if it's below 50, then that condition will be met. Note that the conditions are all a logical and. So all of these conditions have to be met before the automation will actually fire the action. So my next condition is take a look at the solar forecast. Is it going to be if it's less than 15? So this is for solar forecast for today. So I'm running this automation between midnight and 5 a.m. So I want this to be taking place on that same day. And here is the time condition of between 1 minute past midnight and 5 a.m. So if all of those things are true, we are going to call my script of Solis charge from grid. And that's the script that I just used. I just demonstrated just now to flip that register from 33 to 35. So if all those conditions are met, we're going to change that register to 35. We're going to start charging from the grid. What I've also done is I've created a timer that's going to count down for 2 hours, because if the battery, I must admit I haven't actually worked out how long it would take to charge an empty battery from the grid at 45 amps. But what I don't want to happen is for the battery to go beyond or to charge beyond that cheapest time period. So say that the cheapest time period was from 2 till 4. I don't want to then charge the battery beyond 4 o'clock if it's then really expensive to do so, because I'd rather be using what's in the battery than charging what's in the battery, or charging the battery. So I start a 2-hour timer as well at that time. And I have a sensor, created, or a helper they call it, called 2-hour battery charge timer. So there we go. What I then do is I have another automation which is going to reverse that, so that it's going to flip that bit back from 35 to 33. And that's going to happen under two conditions. One is that the battery is charged, so I'm going to stop it at 90%, or my 2-hour timer expires. So here's my other automation. Here we go. So the triggers, these are a logical OR. So when either of those are met, we are going to run this script. So this is, again, hopefully fairly self-explanatory. So when the battery state of charge is above 89, i.e. 90%, or when my timer changes from active to idle, then we're going to fire the script to charge from PV, and that will stop charging from the grid. Now what I found is this works. This is this is actually working for me now. So if I go back to my overview, what I found was last night, if I look at my battery storage, we can see at 5 minutes, pretty much 5 minutes to midnight there, my battery state of charge reached 47%. I then charged from the grid up until it clicked off at 97%. There we go. And then I started using the battery again. So there we go. That's me charging overnight at the cheapest rate. This does need a little bit of tuning. And what I also have found is the solar forecast does fluctuate quite a lot. So right now, and it's not entirely accurate. I mean, it's never going to be. But right now it's dull and overcast outside and raining. Yeah, it thinks that I'm going to produce, 17.5 kilowatts of power. And I've seen that for today fluctuate significantly. So here we go. It thinks it's going to be producing 20 kilowatts, which is just it. I would say that's highly unlikely. In the middle of summer we might get 20 kilowatts. I've got 10 455 watt panels, so it needs a really good day for me to do 20 kilowatts. It could be that I need to tweak my configuration for the production forecast, because of the angle of my panels, or the direction they're facing, but it's a good indicator. So there we go. I mean, I think that covers just about everything. As I say, I'm actually pretty excited that this is working, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it works out over the winter, and in terms of saving me some money. So I hope you've enjoyed the video to some extent, and it's been useful. So if you'd like to make any comments, please feel free to do so. Thanks very much. Bye.